Are you the quantum mechanics?
Yes, we're the Quantum Mechanics. We're the paranormal podcast for the believers, the doubters, and... I can't believe I got that wrong.
Everyone in between, is that what you were thinking?
That was what I was thinking.
Okay.
All right, cool.
That's fine.
Yeah, good. Probably the first time we've ever messed that up. I can't believe it.
I say that in my sleep sometimes.
I know. I can't believe I got that wrong. I've got a bit of a weird start to this podcast, Ben, that I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
And I've had my very own Mandela experience going on, Mandela effect experience.
Okay.
So I know we talk about it, we've talked about it a fair bit in the past, the Mandela effect. It came from a textbook that basically said that Nelson Mandela died in prison, and everyone goes, there's some shift in the universe that meant that occurrence got changed.
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of kind of poor examples like...
The Monopoly Man has a monocle.
And the one, was it Mirror, Mirror on the Wall in Snow White is actually Magic Mirror on the Wall, never said Mirror, Mirror. All those little things, which I think most of them you can kind of dismiss. But I've been having my own weird one. Right, now, Ben, you're probably going to think what I'm about to say is a bit nuts. And listeners, please don't worry about my health. I am okay. But it's to do with Sunday roasts.
Okay.
Now, I'm a big fan of the Sunday roast. I like cooking it. I mean, it's stressful at times, and sometimes I don't want to do it. But I do like the process, getting the gravy right, everything perfect. And I don't know if you'd agree with me. There are 4 main meats for a proper Sunday roast.
Beef, lamb, chicken, pork.
Yeah,
Right.
they're like the 4, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know there are seasonal variations where you can have a bit of turkey, or you can have a goose, or if you're very posh, a bit of venison, but they are the staples.
They are the staples.
Here's my Mandela effect. There's a meat missing.
There's a meat missing.
There is a meat missing. There was a 5th meat that was a Sunday roast staple, which now no longer exists in our universe. Now, I don't know what the animal is. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what the meat looks like. It is definitely meat-based rather than poultry-based. And it is not one of the, it's not, people against turkey. No, it's not, none of those. It was a 5th main meat that I believe has disappeared.
What was it called?
No idea.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. Whenever I cook, so I haven't done it for a while because, we've been in the summer months. So I did my first, change of season roast last week, and it just hit me again. I was like, every time I do a roast, I go, there is a meat missing.
Well, you said you thought I might think you were mad.
And you?
Well, only a little bit. I mean, I can't think of what that might be. I mean, I can only think of things like potted meats or like Bernard Matthews turkey roast or something like this.
No, it's an animal that doesn't exist anymore. Now, whether that, if you're going with the full-on Mandela effects, it's either somebody's time travelled back in time and kind of changed the timeline so that animal no longer exists. It is... I don't know, a glitch in our simulated reality, if you believe in that actually, maybe it was too difficult an animal to have in the simulation, so they got rid of it. Parallel universe stuff comes to mind. Or it's just a weird thing I've made up in my own head, but it feels really real to me that there was a meat.
The case of the missing meat.
The missing meat. So I'm curious if anybody is with me on this journey of the missing meat, or it is just me. So, the rules are, it was a staple of Sunday lunch. It wasn't, it wasn't a turkey or something that you do seasonally, or a venison, which you might do occasionally, or a duck or anything like that. It was in that beef, lamb, chicken, pork, and I think it was a meat rather than poultry. But I'm going to leave it at that. Anybody who this is resonating with, let us know.
I've just got visions of, like, you go around your mate's house and his mum's like, I got that special meat again.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it's delicious. Little did you know that she used to work for the RSPCA and in the cat rehoming centre.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. All I know is that meat has got better since it hasn't been cooked in the 70s.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Certainly veg has got better since you've not been boiling broccoli for 4 hours on the go.
Yes.
What is that with like our parents' generation?
Or my grandparents' generation. You get the carrots on at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, well, my mum would do it with peas.
Oh, yeah.
It's 10 o'clock. We're going to eat at 2. I'll get the peas on. What? They need 3 minutes.
Peas need 3 minutes maximum, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so if that resonates with anyone, or it's just me, obviously doesn't resonate with Ben. He's not with me. He doesn't feel there's a meat missing, but I do.
What? Just before we get into the paranormal, what is the best Sunday roast, though?
Ooh, I like... It depends on the quality of the meat. If you can get some good beef, I don't think you can beat it. Like a rib of beef.
A rib of beef on the bone, yeah.
On the bone with a nice kind of red wine, bit of thyme, gravy.
Nice and rich, pink in the middle.
Yeah, homemade Yorkshire pudding.
You see, I like it. On Sunday, as a treat, Rachel made me a chicken roast, but it was complete with the bacon on the top, sausage meat stuffing, and chipolatas, and a Yorkshire pudding, and bread sauce, and roasties.
Yeah, this is why I don't, because I like making the gravy. This is why I'm not a massive fan of pork for Sunday roast, because
pork is harder for the gravy.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right with gravy. Can do some nice caramelised apples with it, but yeah, I miss the gravy. The gravy it's all about the gravy for me. Getting the gravy right.
Someone's going to get on the app and give us a review saying, I thought it was paranormal show, not cookery, but I could speak for hours about gravy. But
sorry, one more tip though that I've found, and I don't know why it works. Parboil the potatoes for about 15 minutes in a teaspoon of bicarbonated soda, or what do you call it? Like it's like self-raising stuff, baking powder.
Yeah, baking powder, yeah.
Just makes them amazing when you actually do roast them. Anyway, enough.
Oh.
Yeah, missing meat, let us know.
That's all I'm thinking of now.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of meat, is this a good segue? Speaking of meat, have you ever come across psychic surgeons? You must have seen...
Speaking of meat,
I know.
That is such a one-show segue. Speaking of embroidery, have you ever come across surgeons? That would be better, actually. Yeah.
But have you come across psychic surgeons?
No.
So there's been...
These are not these, like faith healers who say they cure you with their hands or anything like that.
No, these are people who go in and remove what look like bloody entrails. And there's been a few documentaries about it, and in the main, most of them are exposed as sort of, they will hide a chicken entrail and they will sort of pretend to pull it out. And then the person is, there's a power of suggestion that they're going to be okay. Yeah. And unfortunately, they're not. And usually there is money exchanged.
The most famous example of that I remember was Andy Kaufman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when he was really ill, he was convinced that he'd found somebody, and it was exactly that trick. It was, some kind of animal, like chicken entrails and stuff. And the guy said, I've pulled out. I think it was it cancer that Kaufman had, I think?
Yes, I think you're right.
This charlatan had basically said, here we are, I've cured it, and obviously he hadn't, and a lot of money was exchanged. Yeah.
Oh, sad. That's sad. Yeah. Well, you see, that is most people's perception of it. And I was drawn into this story because I found out that in Sao Paulo. Why can I suddenly not speak? There's a group of physicians and surgeons who work at the largest hospital there, and they're all incredibly well qualified. In fact, most of them qualify at the medical schools in the US, and they meet to consult mediums every month. Not necessarily definitely not to change any diagnosis they've got, but they use them as an aid to what they're doing. So they reckon that the clinical and therapeutic results are very effective. Wow. And beyond what medical techniques alone could produce. So it's a bit like, I guess, if you are a hedge fund manager going to a psychic to talk about the money markets.
Yeah, or
a
remote viewer,
Yeah. So this is not a completely off-the-wall thing. That actually happens, that is documented, and they're not shy about it. I think the only reason that we don't hear about it in other countries is because it's a little bit more accepted in that part of the world. And that doesn't mean, that's not an insult to people there, it's just people are more open to different ideas.
And is it partly a kind of advertising gimmick? Do they promote the fact they do it, or do they keep it a bit quiet?
No, well, they talk about, they meet in, I was going to say meet in public. They make no secret that they meet these people, and they use it in their work to, help the people that are under their care.
Right.
But taking it one step further, I came across this book, Arrigo, Surgeon of the Rusty Knife. Isn't that a great title of a book?
Yeah, that's a great
title. This is the story of a surgeon that is one of those psychic surgeons who does go in and aid people and pull things out of them.
Fully qualified?
No.
Okay.
And as you will discover, it has been very, very difficult to prove that he is anything other than who he says he is.
Right.
Surgeon of the Rusty Knife is the title of a book written in 1974 by a chap called John G. Fuller. And it's the account of a Brazilian miner who had little formal education, but under the direction of, I can't even believe this is true, Dr. Fritz, a deceased World War German doctor, cured thousands of people of a myriad of ailments from 1950 until 1971 in his clinic in Congonhas de Campo. You witnessed me put this into Google so I could say the word properly before I did it.
That sounded good.
Congonhas de Campo, which is a remote mining town in Brazil.
Right.
And the guy who did all of this work, Jose Arrigo, he said that he cured people using psychic surgeries. And the surgeries he performed used only crude instruments, no anaesthetic, and usually only took minutes or sometimes even seconds to complete. And here's the really peculiar thing about it. He accepted no money for it whatsoever.
Wow. Although if he'd advertised himself as the surgeon with the rusty knife, you'd be a bit kind of, I'm not sure about that.
Well, no, you see, this is part of his appeal. Was that
part of appeal?
Yes. Wow. He gained great notoriety in 1950 when one of Brazil's state senators, Lucio Bittencourt, suffered from inoperable colon cancer. And he was a guest at this hotel where Arrigo was staying for nothing to do with the work he was doing. He was staying there for an organised miners' protest. Right. And as the story goes, Arrigo entered Bittencourt's room early one morning, razor in hand, and quickly operated on the senator, who passed out, woke the next morning to find his pyjamas torn and blood everywhere. Arrigo, crucially, remembered nothing of what had transpired, but X-rays showed that the senator's tumour was gone. He was overcome with what had happened.
I'm not surprised. That sounds incredibly traumatic.
Well, no. Senator Bittencourt was so unshy about what had happened. He spoke about the experience publicly and frequently, alluding to this miracle in his speeches. He used it as part of his campaign. Wow. The psychic healer also treated and cured other prominent people in Brazil, including the president's daughter, the president's personal pilot, and the chief of the security police. So he became known in these wealth and top-end circles as somebody to go to.
Almost like a Brazilian surgical Rasputin, sounds like.
Yes, that's a very good way of putting it, yes. And he gained this notoriety, and it was because of this notoriety amongst that, I guess, the ruling classes, and I suppose in these days you'd call it the elite. It made him famous. He didn't require any special conditions or a specific environment in which to work. He always performed in bright light. He accommodated all who wanted to watch. So you could just turn up and see what was going on.
No thanks.
And he said he had nothing to hide. And accordingly, many physicians visited Arrigo's clinic to see what he was up to.
When the original story with the senator, did you say the surgeon didn't even remember?
That's right.
Doing it.
That's right.
God,
he didn't know he'd done it.
God, imagine if it had gone wrong.
Because he's working under possession, you see.
Imagine if it had gone wrong and he'd clipped an artery or something and killed the senator.
Well,
no one would believe that's your defence, would it?
Well, no, probably not. But there was one doctor, and this is the beginning of him being a bit more, I guess, accepted by the medical profession as much as he was. He witnessed a psychic operation in which a female patient had a chunk of tissue 31 inches long and 15 inches wide removed from her ovaries. And the doctor who was observing it recalls that the scissors moved on their own as if being taken by another hand, and described hearing the sounds of metals and tissues being cut. The physician was also impressed to see that a simple "Lord, let there be no blood" came out of Arrigo's mouth, and then the bleeding had ceased. He was able to bring an immediate stop to a hemorrhaging incision, and in fact sealed the wound so well that there was no need for any stitches, there was no need for any antibiotics. It was all, and imagine something that big. That is huge.
That's massive, yeah.
There's another interesting case. There's a guy called Carlos Paranos, and he reported that his sister-in-law had been diagnosed by several doctors, including her own father, with cancer of the liver. The condition was inoperable, and in desperation, she reached out to Arrigo. They went and visited him, waited in line with everybody else, and when her turn came, before she could say anything, and this is the crazy thing, Arrigo informed her that she had cancer of the liver and that he would perform a quick operation. He lay her down on the newspaper-covered floor, made a quick incision into the girl's liver with his penknife. The stunned crews and the girl's father waited for the expected hemorrhaging. They were nervous, as you can imagine, only to see a mere trickle of blood coming out of the wound. According to Cruz, things got even stranger, as Arrigo inserted a pair of scissors into the wound and immediately took away his own hand. The scissors again moved of their own accord, and after a few seconds, Arrigo pulled out the scissors, reached into the wound, pulled out the tumour, slapped it into Cruz's hand when he had finished, wiped the incision with a piece of cotton, and then placed a crucifix against it. And without stitches, it closed up. Before them, it closed up. Sonia, that was the name of the girl, was dazed but not in any pain. She was able to get up and walk around immediately, and a biopsy of the growth that Arrigo had removed confirmed that it was indeed cancer. Neither the girl's father, Cruz the doctor, had any explanation for what they had witnessed, but the girl went on to be absolutely fine and lived a happy, normal life. Wow. This thing about the scissors moving, though, this is a real difference between what you see with Arrigo here and what you see normally with these psychic healers, where they hold their hands very closely to the patient's body and they appear to be doing this stretching motion, and they sort of, it's almost as if they're pulling these cancerous growths or whatever they are through the skin. Yes. Whereas this is actually an incision. He does make an incision. You can see inside the person, but the scissors don't appear to be under his control.
And when you say, just to clarify, when you say not under his control, as in, that doesn't sound like his hands are being guided. It means he's not even touching them?
He's not even touching the scissors. No. No, they're moving completely of their own volition.
And they're witnesses who've seen that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, what is also interesting about this is that there was a medical researcher at New York University conducted a study on Arrigo between 1961 and 1968, included a formal evaluation of the healer, and he counted thousands of cases that were diagnosed and treated, and to the best that it was possible to tell, there was not a single error in any of them. Now that is pretty staggering.
That is staggering.
When the doctor who was studying him, a Dr. Puaric, saw Arrigo's work, he was obviously immediately stunned. And he said this to a magazine interview he made in 1988 about it. He said, "Back in 1961, I repeatedly took teams of doctors with me to study him until about 1968. When you're there watching him operate, you can't believe it's real. It shocks every sensibility. A guy walks up to him and Arrigo says, 'Hey, you've got cancer near the pancreas, pull up your shirt, drop your pants.' He pulls out a knife, opens it up, cuts out the intestine, glues the two ends together. Somehow, just like that, this person is healed. There would be a couple of hundred people lined up around the house waiting to be next. The average treatment time was 2 minutes. And he goes on to say some of the operations that he's carrying out, like that one there with the colon, is a 6-hour operation, conventionally done. 2 minutes.
But, given the nature of what's going on, infections in post-surgery are a huge thing, right? It's one of the big risks. So it would suggest either there's something about the process that's completely sterile, or there is almost some more paranormal stuff going on after the operation and in the recovery period, wouldn't it?
There's two things about that. One, nobody ever does seem to fall prey to an infection.
Yeah.
And he does make prescriptions. So he will say to people, here's some pills that you should take. But often, and here's the curious thing, the medicine that he prescribes, the doctors have no idea why he's prescribing it, but he says you must take it.
So what, more of a placebo or just secretive?
So one of the arguments,
secret brew.
No. It is just like go get some amoxicillin or whatever.
Right.
One of the reasons that people have become suspicious of him is because his brother is the only pharmacist in the village. But then again, that doesn't undermine what he's doing.
It's a risky way of getting new business for his brother, right?
Absolutely. And again, most of these people are so poor they don't pay for it anyway. It's just given to them.
Right.
There is very little money changing hands anywhere here. One of the strange things that is pointed out by this doctor who's observing him, and he does go on to film him actually, because Arrigo says, there is no holes here. I'm not doing anything that you can't look at or film. He describes when he's doing these operations that he's in a trance-like state, and he has this strange glowing look in his eyes, and he affects this strange, thick German accent. And he doesn't appear to be Arrigo. He does appear to be somebody else. And he continues to use this sort of appears to be rusty, dull blade, which is a penknife. It's not only, though, that he does these going in with a knife jobs. The doctor who's making this film about him, he witnesses this guy and interviews him. So this guy who's been around Arrigo's operating area all day, he's got a wheelchair, and he says that he used to be an auto mechanic, but he can't work any longer because his knees are broken and he doesn't know what's wrong with them. But he's had 21 operations trying to solve the problem. And again, the doctor, the observing doctor, looks down and he can see the little scar marks all around his knees. And the guy just says, I don't know what's wrong with them. I'm just unable to walk. I'm hoping that Arrigo can do something. Anyway, Arrigo walks straight in when it's this guy's turn. He's the last of the day. And in this thick German accent, he accuses him of being a bum and he should stand up and stop being so lazy. And the guy's like, but my legs. And he's like, no, you're a bum, stand up. Doesn't even touch him. And the guy just stands up and goes, oh, all the pain's gone. And this guy's like, yeah, of course your pain's gone. You go away. This guy became so fascinated by the treatment that he was given and so worried that it would disperse. They ended up spending his days just hanging around Arrigo's place in case his knees went again. He was so grateful. Yes, yeah. But his knees, ever since that day till he died, apparently were absolutely fine. So there is something more than just some other trickery here. But again, we will come on to that.
He's going, thanks, you've cured me, but could you work on your bedside manner, please?
Yeah, well, this German that he's possessed by apparently takes no prisoners and is very, very short.
Is there any research that this kind of German surgeon he's channeling existed?
Well, I'll come on to that, but The short answer is yes and no.
Okay.
When they'd finished doing the examination of the examinations, the medical team who were examining Arrigo said that they were able to verify 550 verdicts because in those cases, they said, we ourselves were able to establish a pretty definite diagnosis of the problem. For the remaining 450, for example, in rare blood cases, we could not be certain of our own diagnosis because we lacked the available on-the-spot resources to enable us to do it. I can understand that. Blood work, labs, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But of those which we were certain we could not find... those which we were certain of, we could not find a single case in which Arrigo was at fault. Every patient was helped and none had post-operative complications. When they started doing photographing and filming of these procedures, which helped obviously document the cases and provide a layer of defence against fraud, the most convincing validation of the psychic healer's ability came then when Dr. Poaric decided to let Arrigo operate on himself.
Oh, that's brave.
To excise a benign tumour on his elbow. This, Poaric knew, would be a truly evidential test. And this is the story that he relates. The scene was a crowded room with some 90 people gathered around as spectators. With a flourish, Arrigo asked that someone furnish him with a pocket knife. This was produced. Arrigo asked Poaric not to watch the operation, so Poaric turned his head towards the cameraman who was filming the picture. Within a matter of seconds, Arrigo placed the tumour and the pocket knife in Poaric's hands. In spite of being perfectly conscious, Poaric had not experienced any pain or even any sensation on the surgical site. Yet there was a bleeding incision and there was a tumour. Knowing that the knife was dirty, that his skin was not cleansed, and Arrigo's hands were certainly not clean, Poaric suspected he might get an infection, perhaps even blood poisoning. Nevertheless, the wound healed clean without a drop of pus in 3 days, half the time required under normal precautions. Together with the thousands of people who attested to Arrigo's healing powers, including prominent government figures and the virtual impossibility of fraud, it is difficult to offer a scientific explanation for the phenomenon, and that is exactly what the doctor who was operated on said. Like, bearing in mind, the tumour that was taken away from him on the elbow was not only just near some nerves, which would have been very painful if he'd gone near them, it would have been possible that he would have stopped the hand being able to work. Because as I understand it, that is part of the nerve system that goes through where he was going in, and he could have made it so that he would never have been able to use his hands again. That didn't happen.
There's a few things there, aren't there? There's, it's like, puts my Mandela effect of there's a missing meat into perspective. You've got to be a bit kind of... Wow, what a risk to take for that doctor. Like you said, it could have resulted in him in losing the use of his hand, but he went for it. I'm assuming they did examine or x-ray his elbow or whatever it was, and the tumour had gone?
Oh, yes. Well, he didn't even have to do that because he was given the tumour. He could see it had gone, and then he was in pain anyway, and he needed it gone, and he could tell that the pain had gone.
Right.
But yes, I do believe that he obviously followed up with all the things that you would imagine.
Well, I'm saying that because, the chicken liver trick could have been implemented, but they did check that the thing had been removed.
Yes. And don't forget, earlier on we heard that he'd put a cancerous tumour in the hands of the father of the girl who'd had the operation, and that was found tested to be cancer. Yes. So it has been very difficult to find where the problem lies with what's been going on here, except for the problem lies with the fact that he puts everything down to this Dr. Fritz, and that doesn't go down well with people, because if you say, I'm a great surgeon, but it's all because of a spirit possession, people tend to back away towards the wall very quickly.
I think I would.
And yes, so you get this giggle factor. The other thing about this, which this sort of, before we go on to talk about Dr. Fritz, one of the crazy things is Arrigo foretold his own death, as told by Dr. Fritz. He said he would have a violent death. And he kept telling people as the time got closer, he said, I'll be going soon. And he died in a car crash on April the 11th, 1971. Wow. Straight after he was telling these people, and he even phoned the president and told him that he was about to die, because the president had obviously become quite fond of him, and he wanted to phone him to say goodbye. Wow. And this is what happened. Wow. The big problem beyond... just the Dr. Fritz situation is separating Arrigo from all of those people who pull chicken blood out of other people.
That's what's sitting uncomfortably with me, I must say.
You're not the only one. The doctor who's studying him, he begins to interview local doctors, and generally they kind of approve of him, even though they've put a dent in their practices. So, of course, over there, people pay for their services. But quite often, he points out, people who couldn't be cured by them come to him to be cured. And, of course, these doctors wish no ill on their patients. So if they diagnose somebody with a terminal disease and they go there to get cured, all they can do is be thankful.
Do no evil.
Then there's the 2 Catholic seminaries in town, and they have mixed reactions. They more or less tolerate Arrigo, and he, at most of his life, he had been a Catholic anyway. But one priest began to suspect that Arrigo was in league with the devil, and he was proposing a witch trial of sorts. Wow. Now, of course, that did not go down well with the local people, and that never came to pass.
Never happened.
No, but there was, this suspicion that he must have sold his soul or do something else. Yeah. And then this idea of Dr. Fritz, nobody was able to collect any evidence that this man existed. The Brazilian Medical Association and the Roman Catholic Church both tried to find evidence for this man, couldn't find any. And then there was some other sort of side claims, like, for example, Arrigo said sometimes that it was more than one spirit. And he described the spirit of he describes him as a Norseman with a green energy emanating out of his eyes. Wow. And, of course, that doesn't go down well, particularly with people either.
Yeah, because you kind of... Yeah, if you're going to go with it, you want the possession to be a kind of, I don't know, like an angel guiding your hand rather than something pagan like that.
Exactly. So there was kind of like the best explanation that anybody ever gave to this. And there was several people who came out and sort of actually after his death and said, this is all a placebo effect. This can't be real. And they were very much coming at it from the point of view of like, it is impossible. But nobody else ever was able to argue with the openness, the willingness to submit to the long form investigation, and the substantiation of the healing abilities by all of these people that were cured by him. And these aren't obviously paid stooges. I mean, this senator, he comes out and defends Arrigo in every possible opportunity. They won't hear anything of it. He's almost considered almost saintly. I think the whole problem with this doesn't come down to he's a talented man. It comes down to this idea that the supernatural is causing this. Yep. And this idea that things moved around the surgery by their own volition really, really bothered people. So it wasn't just the scissors. People noticed that other things would move. He would have things handed to him. So in that example where I gave, where he said the knife was handed to him. So on that instance, it was a person that handed it to him. In other instances, he would appear to have nothing in his hands, and then he would just close and open them, and then there'd be a knife there or a razor blade, and then he would start speaking with this thick German accent. He was unavailable as Arrigo, and he would start going in and doing his work. And that very much didn't sit with people who were trying to find this logical explanation. And I completely understand that.
Was he speaking in German?
Well, so they brought interpreters along. This is actually covered. So they bring interpreters along, but the interpreters have a hard job understanding whether he is speaking like pidgin German, actual German, or whether he's just very distracted and doesn't want to speak at all.
Right.
So he is speaking some German, but he doesn't sit there and have a long conversation in German. That is true.
Right.
But he always has a Germanic accent.
But I guess he's speaking. What are they? Is it Portuguese? They speak.
It's Portuguese, yeah.
So he's speaking. At times, he's speaking Portuguese in a German accent.
He's speaking Portuguese in a German accent.
Right,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Which, again, from a kind of Catholic Church possession perspective, would be a red flag for them, wouldn't it? Because you would think he would be speaking in a language he doesn't understand.
That's right. That's right. And then one of the other big flags that comes up towards the latter part of his life is as he's speaking to people and becoming more and more open about what is happening, he admits that he's also channeling a 13th century monk. And that religious crossover begins to really put everyone's backs up in that local Catholic church. Right. And again, it also makes it much more difficult for the doctors. There's a great description here of a doctor who begins to present his evidence at a medical conference and sort of talk about how great he is. But he talks about Dr. Fritz and the friends from the spiritual world. He's laughed off stage before he can even say a word about Arrigo.
It's not just Dr. Fritz. There's the Norse god as well with the green eyes and the monk.
And there's the monk. Yeah. And then everything goes wrong. And there was, for the doctors who were investigating him, they ran into problems as well because everyone was expecting an explanation, if you like, for the phenomena. They were waiting for this is what is going on here. Maybe, and even maybe a replicable thing. Has he discovered a new form or of surgery, or is he bringing forth an old form of surgery? So like those doctors at the beginning that we spoke about, is he doing something that we haven't yet realised that we can do? Right. Something that mortal men and normal men could do.
And just framing it in a kind of possession way rather than it. I'm not saying deliberately, but maybe even subconsciously framing it in a possession way.
Yeah, that's right. And then the idea of the negated pain and the healing, that is also a problem because that is mixed up with some religious like metaphors and iconography. So you saw how I mentioned that there was a cross applied to the wound. Yeah. Well, that is also mixed up with or goes alongside the monk who is friends with the Norse guy. Between them, they have this green ray which emanates from his eyes, but only Arrigo can see them, and that is what causes the healing. So that is also upsetting people, where you're kind of mixing these paranormal weirdness with with
iconic religious
things, and then one of the monks says, perhaps I need smoked glasses to see this green vision. So you get all of this kind of chatter about it. And the problem is, of course, Arrigo doesn't defend. Well, he doesn't need to defend anything. His defense is that he's doing all of this work.
It's so theatrical, isn't it?
It's so theatrical, yeah.
And are you saying, sorry, just the way you described it, it's not like he can see these people rather than they are in him, or both?
So he doesn't interact with them personally. He says that they take control of his body.
Okay, fine.
And there is no good origin story. I was expecting an origin story of how Dr. Fritz started to come through him. Well, this whole thing starts as a rumour that this man can heal you, because apparently what happens is just one day he gets up, picks up a razor blade, cuts this person and cures them, and this person doesn't even know they're ill, except turns out their doctor was about to tell them that they were very ill. So by the time they go to the doctor, they're cured. Arrigo is like, I don't know what I just did there. That's a thing. And that's how it all starts, this jumping onto somebody who they didn't know was poorly. And the origin story is kind of, there's no possession, there's no it's a revelation. He was just going along as a minor.
Was there an origin story for the Norse god? Is there a Norse god who does healing with green eyes? Or
I don't think it's a Norse god. I think it's just a Norse man.
Right,
but okay. No, there is no origin story for any of those things.
There's no lore about that.
No. And this is one of the things. So the spiritualist side of the believers, if you like, they were trying to find a good explanation from their point of view as to why, that's why they started looking for this Dr. Fritz as well, because if there'd been this incredible surgeon in the First World War, which is where he's said to have come from.
Right.
Surely there would be stories about him. Surely he would be doing something. But no, there's no stories about this incredible surgeon. They can't even find somebody of that name.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to make up a German, calling them Mr. Fritz or Dr. Fritz is almost a racist thing now, isn't it? I mean, it's a crazy thing to call somebody, really.
Well, I guess that leans you into some kind of past life experience. You know what I mean? He's channeling the past life of this surgeon, or, you know, like those past life stories where you go, oh yeah, we looked into the story. Oh, there was a Dr. Fritz in World War One who helped many people, but because he was in the trenches, there was no sterilized equipment, just had to work with what he had. You can see a kind of base story for that, can't you?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And the author of this book points out, like, if Arrigo had been documented properly, and if they'd been able to find any backstory to any of this work, apart from sort of what they did find, which is just, witnesses, there would be a need for considerable funding and professional interest from qualified doctors. It couldn't just be ignored, even if it was a spiritual thing. If they could prove who Fritz was and that he was coming through, could they get him to come through somebody else? He's saving lives.
Well, I guess it's, you go with the thing of, from a scientific perspective, if you believe the data on the results, you'd go, something's going on here. We've got to find out what, right?
Yeah, exactly. As it was, after the investigation, for a good few years, people decided, well, we'll just take it for granted, and we'll just keep using it. And up until he died, although there was a lot of kerfuffle around the explanation, people generally accepted it. And towards that sort of point in 1971, when you read into it, the church had kind of, like, they'd given up. That was a weak suggestion by the monk that there should be a trial, by the priest that there should be a trial.
Well, given
that was
his
never going to
connections,
happen. Yeah, exactly.
With the president and whatever, it's not going to happen, right?
No. If anything, if he'd been a more religious man, then, and he hadn't have sort of put this work down to, if he'd have put it down to angels rather than a possession, then perhaps he would have been deified. You know, he would have perhaps given
Pedro Pio or whatever.
Yeah,
a bit like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he didn't do surgery or healing in that sense, but he has got that. Pedro Pio does have that mysticism around him from a holy perspective, doesn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that in a nutshell is the only case that I can find where even the people who say, no, it was a placebo, they have got no evidence to do that, and there was a lot of counter-evidence. Pretty much 100% of the other cases where there is and I'm talking now about a psychic healer breaking the skin, it does appear not to be real. This appears to be the only case of a spiritual healer, a psychic healer who is breaking the skin, that is doing something proper, if you like.
And also, you know, a placebo effect might make you feel better, might help your body slow the progress of a cancer. But, you know, I don't think there's any evidence anywhere that a placebo effect could stop a cancer.
No, absolutely.
But in a way, that's the danger of the story for me, is, let's go with it, that he had come across something either paranormal or something in terms of technique that he was able to do this stuff. You then get the hundreds of other charlatans, don't they, who, people like Andy Kaufman, and I know people who were in that position, and not quite that level, but had gone to a spiritual route, and, you know, they ended up kind of not being here anymore because they believed in it, and, you know, they didn't get treatment. Which that's the danger of this, isn't it? In a way. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the other thing about it is that if one was to look past the Dr. Fritz element to it and start thinking about, I don't know, like medicine men of the past, who maybe were called witch doctors. They came up with some very potent herbs and chemicals which absolutely would have worked. Like, for example, I discovered that is it called Recipine, which apparently has lots of different names, but it's a modern tranquilizer that was first used by medicine men in South America.
Right.
So those sorts of discoveries, people like there was a realization that people weren't always stupid in the past and they knew stuff. I think there was a thought that if this guy had been channeling something almost in inverted commas as sane as that,
yes,
people may have gone along with it a bit more. Yeah.
Well, it's reminding me of a lot of legitimate historical witches were just those kind of healers working with herbs and plants and stuff and helping to cure people. But that's where they almost got that reputation of there's something paranormal about them. They're possessed. They're witches. Interesting if this guy had been a woman, would it been a different outcome? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether they'd be seen as some kind of crazy witch that we've got to get rid of.
Definitely.
Than embraced by the president is quite interesting.
Well, it was quite a bold and smart move to go in there and heal that senator.
Risky, but
risky. And there are some people that say, that was, that's classic Dr. Fritz.
Right.
But,
how would you know that? Oh, yeah, I know him.
Classic Dr. Fritz.
Classic Dr. Fritz. The bit about it that I'm also thinking, and if anything like this ever comes up again, it's like you need to get that person in a controlled scientific laboratory environment, don't you? And study it properly, really study it to kind of work out, even if you're just working out there is some weird placebo, or like you said, there is something quote unquote paranormal, or, it's all BS and he was just lucky statistically. You know what I mean? You need some real scientific investigation. That's what's difficult about these stories.
It is. I mean, the thing that I suppose they would say, or could say about it, is that he did allow all that filming, and he did allow a doctor himself to be. A doctor did allow himself to be worked on,
which is crazy. But,
which is crazy, yeah.
But then again, I guess if you're being a skeptic, Penn and Teller allow filming. That doesn't mean they're mystical magic, does it?
It doesn't. But on film, they have people, their skin healing in real time.
Yeah.
And either that is an astonishing magic trick that everyone has to be in on, including the subject.
Yeah.
Or there was something paranormal going on here.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, having read about it...
Yeah, where do you lay? I was going to ask you where you've come out.
I think it's likely that there was something paranormal going on there.
Right.
And I was thinking, if I was having problems, I would probably wish to seek out somebody like that. And it's a great difference between somebody who's asking for, $1,000 to cure it, or somebody who won't take any money at all, and the person in front of you can't even feel the operation, and yet there's a piece of cancer taken out on their hand. If it is a trick, it's a very cruel trick. But
I mean, my only counter to that would be people's nefarious motivations are not always money. Could be power, could be prestige, you know what I mean? He's definitely sought out and been embraced by the rich and powerful. I'm not dissing him. I'm just saying you've got to have an open mind on that. You know what I mean?
That is true. Yeah.
I guess I say that because I'm conscious of, like I said, from people that I've known and lots of stories. I wouldn't want anyone listening to this podcast to think, oh, great, that is the solution to my problem. Because when you're in that desperate state, you are looking for a quick fix to your problem. Let's go with it. Let's say he did have these abilities. We are likely talking about one person once a century. The chances of you finding that person today, if you're in that position, are going to be Yeah.
Yeah.
More than winning the lottery, right? Or,
Totally.
Yes. Yeah, if you're in that position, go see a doctor.
Absolutely. And I don't think he would have been in that position had he not. That's kind of what they were saying about Dr. Fritz.
That's where he'd gone, yeah.
That's why he'd gone and healed those people. On the other hand, the other argumentation is, but they're just people who need help as well.
Yeah.
And that senator wasn't the first person he cured. Wouldn't you just help everybody? Of course you would help everybody.
Yeah.
And he did help everybody. He had buses coming down from Argentina, 200 people at a time to cure. And those were laid on by charities. There is very little money changing hands in any of this value chain.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm inclined to think, well, there's something in it. Whether Dr. Fritz is the thing, I don't know, but he appears to be a hero rather than a villain, I think.
Yeah, there is definitely something about that story that's reminded me of Pedro Payo, who is Payo, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who we've talked about on the podcast before, but he was a Catholic priest. He became a saint, I think, didn't he? But he wasn't like healing in that sense, but he would do the stigmata would appear on his hands when he was doing sermons. And there's that great story of he did 2 sermons in 2 different parts of the country at the same time.
At the same time, yeah.
With some doppelganger of effect going on. So, yeah. Well, if it is true, like you said, it's extremely rare. Go see a doctor. Please go see a doctor.
Yes, absolutely do. But, yeah, if you come across any other cases similar to that, which appear to be inexplicably real, let me know, because I've trawled around
rather than chicken based.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about laying on a hand stuff. I'm talking about real life.
Yeah,
like here's a tumor, here's not a tumor.
Yeah,
I was following up one. I've bought a book and I've got to translate it, but it's unfortunately in a format that I can't put through a translator, so I'm going to kind of have to copy it. But it appears that somebody was doing something similar to this for horses.
Okay.
So I'm looking into that. That's Horses in France. That's not the name of the book. Horses in France. But somebody was doing basically psychic...
equestrian healing.
Yes, that's the word I was going for. Equestrian operations in France on racehorses.
That would have been a very different Marvin Gaye song, wouldn't it? When I get that feeling, I need equestrian healing. Wow. Okay, good. Well, very, very intriguing. Don't get caught out by a scammer. There'll be lots of scammers probably adding stuff to this website that we sometimes get, so don't do that. Go see your doctor.
Yes, go see your doctor.
Excellent. Well, we should... next week, I'm just working out when this is going out. This is the last one before Halloween, right?
This is the last one before Halloween.
So, next time you will hear us and see us will be on YouTube. We're doing a live stream on the night of Halloween. We likely to go live around 10 p.m. UK time.
Yeah.
But as a lot of you have done after we mentioned it last week, go to YouTube. I'll tell you what, we'll put a link in the show notes of this episode. Go to our YouTube, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get a notification of when we are going to go live on Halloween night. We've also uploaded the album that we made onto YouTube, so you can go and listen and see that now.
It's really quite good. I can say that because I didn't do it. It's very good.
It's very spooky, so it's definitely something you can have on in the background when you're preparing for your Halloween activities. So go check that out as well. But yes, hit that notification and subscribe so you know when we're going live on YouTube for our live stream on Halloween, and we're very excited. Got some great guests coming as well. Fingers crossed we're going to have James from the Lawn Man, right?
Yes. Ruth Roper Wild.
And Ruth Roper Wild, one of our, our favourite paranormal authors.
Our favourite paranormal authors. And if all goes in the right direction, we'll have a magician with us as well.
Yes, and we've got, we're going to be trying to channel some live spirits as we're live as well. So it's going to be very exciting.
We are, yes.
And we got a smoke machine. It's going to be great.
We have got a smoke machine, yeah.
Good. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you there on YouTube.
We'll see you there. If we don't see you there, we will see you there, I hope. Patreon.com/TQM pod, please. Join us there. That would be great.
Yep.
When you see that production, you know, Ben-Hur, I think, was the most expensive film at one point. This is the most expensive thing we've ever done.
Yes.
We hope it's good.
Yes, well, you've really set the bar high there for Ben-Hur.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we've got how many horses? We've got 47 horses.
Yeah. Keeping the equestrian theme. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Are you the quantum mechanics?